Welcome back to my little channel. Today's video I tried to make yesterday, but then real life got the hang of fucking me around and I didn't finish it. Obviously, this video will be about the Christchurch incident. Or more to the point, the reason of the Christchurch incident. First off, I want to make it very, very clear. I abhor the violence. What this dude did is, in my humble opinion, abhorrent. I am not going to excuse him, nor do I like to see a repeat of what he did. People being murdered for whatever reason is something I don't like. Having said this though, the first conversation I got into, or discussion if you will, was a discussion about gun control. Because obviously America needs more gun control because of what happened in New Zealand. Funny enough, the guy doing the shooting, in his manifesto, said this was the reason why he did the shooting. Because he knew that people would bring this up once again. People like that guy are idiots, but they're not stupid. They will do what they can to turn us against each other. And we let that happen. Well, our politicians let that happen. I'll get into that more in a moment. The discussion on gun control I had on Twitter was rather funny, because New Zealand already has relative strict gun laws. Criminals don't care about gun laws. We saw the same in France when the Bataclan incident or terrorist attack happened. But the gun wasn't the issue. As I said in my tweets, but I won't share them, sorry, if you want to look it up, just look up tweets of Modwain. What I said in my tweet is, don't blame the tool for the actions of a fool. After all, what will be next? Will we ban large automobiles, trucks even? Because let's be honest, we've seen some heinous, terrible terrorist attacks with trucks. So now we should stop people from driving trucks? The UK has a huge knife crime problem because they already banned guns, so it can't be guns. So now they want to ban knives. The next thing they'll ban will be toilet cleaner because they have a huge acid attack problem too. Banning of implements will not change the reality that you cannot blame the tool for the fool. But this isn't even the worst of it. What happened in Christchurch is because of politicians. Politicians keep double talking. When Muslims attack Westerners, yeah, you can't be sure that it's Muslims. It's probably nothing to do with Islam. And yeah, this person probably wasn't a Muslim anyway. But when people point out the double standard in that, they are being called ists or obes, racists, Islamophobes, other versions of that. And basically the discussion is being stopped. You're not allowed to talk about that. It's uncouth. It's not salon fait. How dare you speak out against these poor colored people of a minority class? Well, they're not really, are they? Let's be honest, most people dying from Islamic terror are other Muslims. The second largest group obviously being the Christians. Not white Christians, by the way. Christians, because Christians, as Muslims, come in any color. But you're not allowed to mention that either. And to prove that point, I will show you a clip of Mr. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. Listen what he had to say when London was hit by a bunch of Muslim terrorist attacks. Again, before I show the clip, I'm not blaming all Muslims. I'm not blaming all white men. I'm not blaming any group. But we have to be able to call a spade a spade. But this is what Sadiq Khan had to say.
Mayor of New York, our people, his office, our people having spoken to the police here, the advice we've received is 29 people have been injured. They're with my thoughts and prayers. The advice we've received from the police service here and from the mayor's office is to carry on business as usual. I'm not going to speculate as to who was responsible. I'm not going to speculate as to how the police in New York should react. What I do know is part and parcel of living in a great global city is you've got to be prepared for these things. You've got to be vigilant. You've got to support the police doing an incredibly hard job. You've got to support the security services. And I think speculating when you don't know the facts is
Now, mind you, this is after civilians were attacked in his own city. And he didn't want to speculate on who did it or why it was being done. We have to just keep on keeping on, so to speak. And like lambs, we will be silently led to the slaughter, in his humble view. Do I really mean that? Well, it seems that this is what he's really advocating for. It becomes quite apparent that this is what he wants when we hear him talk about terrorism when Muslims are the victim. And don't get me wrong, I don't want anyone to be the victim of terrorism. But when non-Muslims are the victims, well. But when Muslims are the victims, this is what he had to say.
Like so many Londoners and people around the world, I'm heartbroken by the news from Christchurch, New Zealand. Many innocent people, men, women and children, have been horrifically targeted and murdered in a terrorist attack in mosques because of their faith. My heart goes out to all the victims, their grieving families and friends. Londoners stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Christchurch. We stand in solidarity to say those who seek to divide us, to break our communities and destroy our way of life will never succeed. When the flames of hatred are fanned, when people are demonised because of their faith, when people's fears are played on rather than addressed, the consequences are deadly, as we've seen so sadly today. I want to reassure the Muslim communities here in London that we will do everything possible to support and protect you. I'm in regular contact with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and the Met will be increasing their presence around masjids for Jummah prayers today. Those who seek to divide us will never succeed. We will always reject their hatred and proudly protect our diversity.
Now, obviously, the Mayor of London isn't the only politician that stands up to shout out, we need to defend the Muslims. But not so many politicians stood up and shouted out to defend the non-Muslims that were murdered in Europe in the last years. Most of them agreed with Sadiq Khan. It's all part and parcel. So how come it is not part and parcel when Muslims get murdered? And don't get me wrong, I agree with him that this is a terrible thing. But he set out to protect the Muslims in London. How come he didn't set out to protect the non-Muslims in London earlier? How come he's okay with banning knives when most of the knife crime that's being committed has a very strict group of people at the core of it? There is a huge double standard. But when white people are the victims, well, yeah, it's bad, we don't like it, but when any minority group is the victim, it is automatically done by a racist, it's automatically a hate crime, and we need to protect our societies. The double standard is so palpable in this, that this in effect causes the hatred that he wants to eradicate. Socialistic politicians like this, cultural Marxist politicians like this, and yes, I know he's a Muslim, that's not the point. He is dividing and conquering. And there are so many politicians like him out there. I'm not going to put them all out here, but this one was very clear. Because remember what he said, terrorism is...
It's part and parcel of living in a great global city.
Unless, of course, you are a Muslim, because then...
I want to reassure the Muslim communities here in London that we will do everything possible to support and protect you.
I'm not sure if he really doesn't recognize what he's doing, or whether he's doing it on purpose. But considering he's a politician, I cannot help but feel he is doing it on purpose. Because after all, he recognizes what goes on. He actually talks about it in the same speech where he talks about protecting the Muslims. And it might sound all nice, and people may say, yeah, you're quote mining here. But what he says next, or rather, what he has already said, but what I will show you next, perfectly describes what he's doing and what the problem is.
When the flames of hatred are fanned, when people are demonized because of their faith, when people's fears are played on rather than addressed, the consequences are deadly, as we've seen so sadly today.
The thing is, we can remove the word faith out of that, and we can replace it with any group-defining word we want. Black, white, European, Westerner, African. The effect should be the same. But somehow, it isn't. It's only important because of the faith. So when it's Muslims, it's bad. In all fairness, though, we also see that when black people are the victims, it's a hate crime. If white people are the victims, at best it's a statistic. Because let's be honest, black people killed by the police in the USA, huge issue. More white people get killed, not a big deal. Black people getting killed by white people in America, huge issue. White people getting killed by black people, which happens more, not a big deal. White people getting killed in South Africa, not a big deal. This is part of the biggest problem we are facing in the Western world. We have become so attuned to listening to cultural Marxism, to postmodernist thinking, that we believe it. Oh, white person getting killed, yeah, shit happens. Oh, a Muslim get killed, oh, outrage. Well, some people will say, but 40 Muslims got killed this time. Yeah, that's bad. How many people got killed in that shooting in Orlando? Well, it was only a gay bar, and they were white, mostly, so that's not a problem. Yeah, but personally, I think both of them are a problem. But somehow, we talk a lot about the Muslims, but we don't care about non-Muslim victims. And obviously, as I said earlier, there are lots of Muslims that are victims to Muslim terrorism. But we don't talk about that in the West. There are loads of Christian people that are victim to Muslim terrorism. Non-white Christian people even. But we don't talk about that. Because somehow, one protected group is more important than the other protected group. So Muslims is more important than black Christians. Why can't we say they are both important? And don't get me wrong, I'm not pretending all Muslims are the problem. 25% of the Muslims worldwide, yeah, they are the problem. That means 75% of all the Muslims worldwide are not. And they are indeed living in fear too, because they can be targeted at any point in time as well. But when it comes to politicians, like Sadiq Khan, but there are more of them. I mean, I just gave him as an example. There are far more of them. These politicians are creating a world where extremism starts to grow, and it will flourish under them, because it's the only way to address issues. Never forget, those who make peaceful revolutions impossible, will make violent revolutions inevitable. Like, share and subscribe if you so feel. I hope to see you all next time, and as always, criticism or any form of reply is more than welcome. See you all next time.